The most dangerous conflicts are the ones that never look like conflicts at all. They look like meetings. They look like conversations. They look like friendly advice, voting, negotiations, even peace. And yet, in those quiet places, someone is winning. Someone is losing. And most people don't even know a battle just happened. Today we're going to use one very old book to look at those hidden battles. A book that talks about soldiers and battlefields on the surface, but underneath is really about power, timing, and human nature. A book that suggests the strongest move might be the one nobody even sees. This is The Art of War. And this is not about swords and armor. It's about how decisions are shaped long before anyone raises their voice. Stay with me. Because once you see what this book is actually saying, you may start to notice the invisible wars happening in ordinary life, in offices, in groups, in media, in the stories we tell, and the stories we're not allowed to tell. Most of us grow up with a simple picture of power and conflict. We think of strength as something obvious, the loudest person, the largest army, the biggest budget, the crowd with more people, the side that shouts harder, pushes more, demands more. We imagine that if there is a clash, the winner is the one who fights better, who doesn't back down, who keeps swinging until the other side gives up. We like clear fights. We like clear winners and clear losers. We like visible drama. In that picture, if you don't make noise, you don't matter. If you don't fight back in public, you're weak. If there isn't an obvious struggle, then everything must be fine. The Art of War quietly says something very different. It doesn't say, be louder. It doesn't say, attack first and attack always. Instead, it suggests something almost disturbing. The highest form of victory is the one where no open fight ever happens. The book says, the best leader is not the one who wins many battles. The best leader is the one who wins before the battle even begins. They choose the right ground. They choose the right timing. They prepare in ways nobody sees. They shape the situation so carefully that the other side never even tries to fight. On the surface, this is about war, but think about what that means for politics, for organizations, for everyday power. Instead of asking, how do I win this argument? The question becomes, how do I make sure this argument never happens at all? Because the outcome is already decided. Instead of thinking, how do I beat my rival? It becomes, how do I place my rival in a position where they can't move, and then let them defeat themselves? This is, and isn't, a comforting idea. On one hand, it's efficient. It avoids open conflict, chaos, and destruction. On the other hand, it suggests that by the time most people see a conflict, the real game may already be over. Most of us are trained to pay attention to the noise. This book tells us to watch the silence. The Art of War is a short, ancient text, usually linked to a strategist called Sun Tzu. It was written for generals, not for voters or employees or social media users. It talks about armies, formations, weather, terrain. But for centuries, people have read it as a book about something bigger, the nature of conflict itself. How does power actually move? How do decisions get made when there is risk and uncertainty? How does one side gain an advantage without destroying everything? The book is divided into simple chapters on planning, on strategy, on terrain, on spies, on fire, and more. It uses very few words, but each line hides layers of meaning. Many people now use it outside of war, in business, negotiations, activism, leadership, even personal life. In this video, we're going to look at it less as a war manual and more as a lens a way of seeing how power works quietly, step by step. We'll focus on two main ideas. First, the idea of winning without fighting, how outcomes are shaped long before open conflict. Second, the idea of knowing yourself and knowing others, why information and perception are often more powerful than force. Then we'll walk through a story, an imaginary scene of power behind closed doors, and slowly unpack what's really happening. One of the most famous ideas from the art of war is this: the greatest victory is the one that requires no battle. Think about how different this is from the stories we usually admire. We like stories of brave last stands, dramatic speeches, close calls, heroic comebacks. They're exciting, they're emotional, they look powerful. But this book quietly says, if you needed a dramatic rescue at the last second, something important already went wrong. The real skill is not to fight well in bad conditions. The real skill is to avoid creating bad conditions in the first place. In simple words, don't rush into battles you don't need. Don't make enemies you don't have to make. Place yourself where you cannot easily lose. Place others where they cannot easily win. That's what it means to win before the fight. Let's make this less abstract. What does winning without fighting look like? Imagine a small team in an office. Two people both want to lead an important project. Let's call them Mira and Thomas. The normal way to think about this is, they both make their case. They both argue in a meeting. They both ask people to support them. Maybe they even clash directly and loudly. Whoever argues better or has more allies wins the fight. But what would it look like to win before that meeting even happens? Maybe, weeks earlier, Mira quietly volunteers for small tasks connected to the project, talks to people who will be affected and listens to their worries, collects a few useful facts and examples, helps her manager solve a related problem. By the time the big meeting happens, several quiet things are already true. People already link Mira with that kind of work in their minds. She already understands what others are afraid of. The manager already trusts her judgment in that area. So when the question comes, who should lead this? It doesn't feel like a dramatic conflict. The battle is tiny. Maybe there isn't even a debate. Mira doesn't shout. She just suggests a clear plan. Others nod because the plan matches concerns they already shared with her earlier. Thomas may never get the chance to start a fight. The situation is already shaped. From the outside, nothing dramatic happened. From the inside, a lot happened. Weeks before. This is what the art of war is trying to show. Power is not only about what happens in the spotlight, it's about how you prepare in the shadows. How does it work in larger systems? On a bigger scale, the book talks about things like terrain, the ground you choose to stand on, timing, when you choose to move and when you stay still, morale, how people feel, not just what they know, resources, who is already exhausted, who is still fresh. Translated out of war language, these become, what rules are we playing under? Who chose those rules? At what point in the process are we entering the discussion? Who is already tired, scared, or distracted? Who has time, energy, and support? The book suggests that if you control these conditions, you may not need to attack anyone at all. They will walk into the outcome you set, as if it were their own choice. Why is this idea so clever? It sounds cold. But there are reasons this approach is powerful. 1, it reduces cost. Every open fight has a price: time, money, reputation, even relationships. If you can avoid that, you keep your strength for when you really need it. 2, It reduces backlash. When people feel openly defeated, they often seek revenge later. But if they believe they chose the outcome themselves, they resist less. 3. It looks peaceful. From the outside, it might even look like harmony. No shouting, no chaos, just agreement. But agreement can hide the fact that one side prepared far better. 4. It reveals a deeper layer of power. Open battles are dramatic, but invisible advantages, who sets the agenda, who has information, who chooses the time, are often more important. This doesn't mean all planning is evil or manipulative. It simply means if we only pay attention to visible fights, we miss the real shape of power. The art of war invites us to ask, who prepared earlier? Who chose the ground for this conflict? Who can walk away easily and who can't? Because often, that's where the outcome was really decided. Another central idea in the art of war can be summed up like this. If you know yourself and know the other side, you remove most of the danger. If you know neither, you're lost. It sounds simple, but it's harder than it looks. We tend to think knowledge is about facts, numbers, statistics, documents, public statements. This book points at something more subtle. Honest knowledge of your own limits. Real understanding of what other people actually care about. Awareness of how things look to others, not just how they really are. Let's break this down. Knowing yourself in this context means, what are your real strengths, not the ones you wish you had? Where are you weak, biased, or easily pressured? What do you care about so much that you might make bad decisions to protect it? How much can you actually handle in terms of risk, stress, and conflict? In conflict, people often lie to themselves more than to others. They overestimate their power. They say they'll never dare to do that without real evidence. They believe they have no choice when they actually do. Self-deception leads to overreach. You attack when you should wait. You stay when you should leave. You threaten something you can't truly carry out. The art of war suggests that a clear, quiet look at yourself is a kind of armor. If you know you're not ready for a direct clash, you don't mistake fear for courage. You don't go where you're likely to break. You adjust your plan instead of pretending you are stronger than you are. This isn't weakness. It's the opposite. It's the strength of not lying to yourself. Knowing others. Knowing others is not just about spying or collecting data. It's about seeing the world through their eyes. What are they afraid of losing? What do they need to show to their supporters, their friends, their group? What would be an acceptable win for them, even if it's not their dream outcome? What stories are they telling themselves about who they are? If you can understand this, you can create outcomes where they don't feel publicly humiliated, even if you get most of what you want. Sometimes this is how real peace is made, not by crushing the other side, but by giving them a way to step back without feeling destroyed. In politics, workplaces, even families, this is huge. When someone feels they have no face-saving exit, they fight harder, even when it's irrational. When they do have a path to leave with some dignity, real solutions become possible. Perception versus reality. The book constantly points to a tension between what is real and what is seen. You may be strong, but if others believe you are weak, they'll act one way. You may be weak, but if they believe you are dangerous, they'll act another way. Both situations can be risky, so strategy becomes not only, what is my position, but also, what does my position look like to them? This doesn't mean faking everything. It means understanding that humans don't react to pure facts. We react to perceptions of facts. If you know how you appear, and you know how they appear to themselves, you can avoid needless clashes. Or, if you're less kind, you can push people into mistakes. The art of war doesn't tell you what to use this knowledge for. It just tells you the knowledge is powerful. It's up to the reader to decide the ethics. Let's step into an imaginary city, high on a hill, stone walls, narrow streets, a wide hall where decisions are made. In this city, a council of elders meets to decide one big question. Should they build a great wall to protect themselves from the outside world, or open a new road to invite more trade and ideas, protection, or openness? The city can't afford both. Two main voices have formed around this choice. On one side is Seren, a careful, quiet strategist. On the other side is Dalen, loud, passionate, and beloved by many citizens. Dalen wants the wall. He stands in the square and speaks to crowds. We are under threat. We must protect our homes, our children. If we build this wall higher and stronger, we will be safe. People cheer. Fear is easy to awaken. The idea is simple. Wall equals safety. Serene thinks differently. She believes the real danger is not sealed gates, but closed minds. She wants the new road opened, more visitors, more trade, more ideas. But she also knows this idea is harder to sell with a simple speech. Let strangers in doesn't feel as comforting as build a taller wall. So Serene doesn't fight Dalen in the square. She doesn't stand beside him and shout, "You're wrong." Instead, she does something else. In the evenings, Serene walks through the city. She visits the workshops of the builders. She talks to the traders at the market. She sits with the younger members of the council, not to lecture, but to ask questions. What are you most afraid of, truly? What would your life look like if we had more visitors, and what if we had fewer? What do you think we're not seeing yet? She listens. The builders tell her, the wall project sounds grand, but if the city spends all its money on stone, we won't be able to repair houses inside the city. People will blame us when roofs leak. The traders tell her, if we close ourselves in, we'll have to pay more for food and tools. Our children will grow up with less. The younger council members share a secret fear. If we only build higher walls, we might become even more dependent on the older families who already have land and storage. Is that safe for us? Serene says little. She makes no promises. She simply gathers these thoughts like arrows she doesn't yet fire. Meanwhile, Dalen keeps speaking in public. He points to dangers outside the city. He repeats stories of theft, conflict, tension. The crowds grow more certain. We need the wall. The night before the council's final vote, Serene hosts a small dinner, not for everyone, just a few key people. The master builder, two of the youngest council members, the keeper of the city's grain stores, and one respected former guard who has seen many seasons. They eat simply. There are no speeches, only a kind of gentle conversation. Serene places a single map on the table. It shows the city, the wall, as it is now, the fields, and a faint line where the new road could go. She asks the builder, if we build the wall higher, what needs to stop happening? The builder hesitates, then answers, we will have to stop repairing inner houses for 3 years. The outer wall will look strong, but the homes inside may start to crack. She asks the keeper of grain, if we close the gates more often, what happens to food prices? They go up, he says, and when food prices go up, anger goes up. She asks the young council members, what do the young people in the city talk about? They want chances, one says, work, learning, travel. If we build only a wall, they will feel trapped. The elder guard sits silently. Finally, Serene turns to him. You've stood on the wall for longer than any of us. What truly frightened you up there? He looks at the map. Empty fields, he says. A city can survive a broken gate if it has enough friends outside, but a city that has no living connections and relies only on stone is a lonely city, and lonely cities go hungry. Seren doesn't say, "So you support my plan?" She doesn't say, "Help me defeat Dalen." She just lets the room sit in that thought. The next morning, the council gathers. The hall is full. Dalen stands tall, full of energy, ready for a fight. He gives his speech. He speaks of danger, of threats, of glory. He promises safety in stone. The room nods. The words are familiar. Then Seren rises. She doesn't attack Dalen. She doesn't call him foolish or reckless. In a calm voice, she says, "We all care about safety. We all care about our children. The question is not wall or no wall. The question is, what kind of safety do we want?" She places the same map on the center table. She doesn't speak for long. In fact, most of the words spoken in support of her view are not hers. She turns to the builder. "Master Builder, can you explain what happens inside the city if we build the wall higher?" The builder clears his throat and repeats what he said last night, now in front of everyone. She turns to the grainkeeper. "Can you explain what happens to our food if the gates are closed more often?" he explains, calmly, practically. She turns to the young council members. "Would you share what you hear from the younger citizens?" They speak, a bit nervously, about trapped futures, about fear of stagnation. Finally, she turns to the old guard. "What frightened you most on the wall after all those years?" He looks at the map, then at the room. "Empty fields," he says again. "The day we have no living paths to the outside, no people who know us, trade with us, care if we survive, that is the day no wall will save us." There is no shouted argument. Dalen feels the ground shifting under his feet, but nobody has attacked him directly. Seren has simply changed what safety means in the minds of the room. Safety is no longer a taller wall. Safety is now healthy houses, fair prices, open paths, and living relationships. When the vote is taken, the result is not a dramatic landslide, but it is clear the city chooses the road. Dalen is not humiliated. He's even offered a place leading the guard for the new trade route, a role that still fits his passion for protection. People leave the hall thinking they have chosen a wise, balanced path. Most of them will never know that the real battle was won quietly, the night before, over a simple dinner. Analysis: what actually happened? Let's slow this story down and look at what's happening beneath the surface, using the lens of the art of war. 1. Seren chooses her terrain. Seren doesn't fight on Dalen's chosen ground, the public square, loud emotions, fear-based stories. She understands that if the battle is about whose speech is more dramatic, Dalen probably wins. That's his strength. So she shifts the terrain. She moves the real conflict into small rooms, private talks, a dinner with key people. In terms of the book, she picks a battlefield where her strengths, calm listening, careful reasoning, long-term thinking, actually matter. This is pure art of war thinking. Don't meet strength with strength on the ground your opponent chose. Choose different ground. 2. She gathers real knowledge. Seren doesn't start by broadcasting her plan. She starts by listening. She learns. The builder's private worries, the grainkeeper's calculations, the younger council members' hidden fears, the old guard's lived experience. This is knowing the other and knowing the terrain. By night, she already understands what arguments will matter in the council, where the weak points are in Dalen's wall equals safety story, how to frame her idea not as dangerous openness, but as another form of protection. She reduces her own uncertainty before the visible debate begins. This matches the book's idea that plans made without knowledge are just gambling. 3. She changes what the fight is about. At first, it looks like the question is wall versus road, protection versus openness. That's a frame Dalen is comfortable with. Protection is simple to sell. Serene quietly changes the question to, what kind of safety do we want? Now, safety is not just about keeping others out. It's about inner stability, food, opportunities, relationships. The battle, in people's minds, shifts from, am I for safety or against safety, which no one wants to be against, to which path gives a deeper, more stable kind of safety. This is a classic move. Change the definition of the key word. The art of war often talks about shaping and forming the situation. Seren doesn't fight the old definition head-on. She expands it until Dalen's simple story no longer feels enough. 4. She spreads responsibility for the message. In the council, Seren speaks very little. Instead, she lets other people say the critical things. The builder admits the cost to homes. The grain keeper talks about prices and anger. The young members talk about hopes and fear of being trapped. The old guard speaks about empty fields. This does several things. It makes the message more trusted. It's not Seren's theory. It's many different people's realities. It protects Seren. She's not personally attacking Dalen. She's just asking for expert opinions. It gives others a sense of ownership. They are speaking their own truths, not repeating her lines. In the art of war, this is like arranging your forces so they naturally move in the direction you want, without being pushed. Seren has prepared the army of arguments and voices long before the council meets. 5. She gives her opponent a way to step back. Notice what Seren does not do. She doesn't mock Dalen. She doesn't try to strip him of honor. She doesn't try to remove him from influence completely. Instead, she allows a role for him after the decision, a leader of protection along the new road. This is a form of knowing others, too. She understands that Dalen is attached to an identity, the defender, the protector. By giving him a way to keep that identity in a new form, she reduces the need for him to sabotage the decision later. In the language of strategy, she avoids turning a defeated opponent into a desperate one. This is not kindness alone, it's also long-term calculation. A desperate rival can cause years of chaos. A rival who feels respected can become an ally, or at least a calmer opponent. 6. The battle is mostly invisible. From the outside, people only see a calm council meeting, a speech from Dalen, a short map presentation, a vote. It doesn't look like a struggle for the future of the city. It looks like normal politics. But from our zoomed-out view, we see that. The real preparation happened in quiet walks and a private dinner. The key shifts were in definitions and perceptions, not in laws or orders. The outcome depended on who understood the deeper fears and needs better. This is exactly the logic of the art of war. If you have to win in a loud, direct clash, you've already failed at a higher level of strategy. The real war was never between Seren and Dalen as people. It was between two visions of safety. Seren simply understood earlier that if she could redefine safety, she could win without open war. Let's step back from our hill city and from ancient battlefields. Think about your own life, your own world. How many decisions that affect you are made in open, loud conflict, and how many are made in small rooms, in quiet emails, in private calls, in unseen meetings long before the public conversation starts? How often do you see a debate where, if you look closely, both sides are already accepting the same basic frame? Maybe the real decision, the real terrain, was already chosen earlier. We can ask ourselves, who set the agenda for this discussion? Why is this the question and not a different one? What options are missing that we never even get to hear? In news, in workplaces, in schools, in online spaces, what shapes which topics become urgent and which stay invisible? Is it always pure logic? Or is it also, who has the time to raise an issue? Who has the money to make it visible? Who has the relationships to get it on the schedule? When we see a public argument, we might wonder, how much of this is real disagreement and how much of it is performance within limits already set behind the scenes? How do we form our own opinions from raw information or from stories told again and again until they feel like simple facts? The art of war quietly suggests that the person who controls the story of what is dangerous and what is safe already has a kind of power before any vote. The person who understands both their own limits and the other side's fears can navigate conflict with far fewer surprises. This doesn't mean everything is a secret conspiracy. Most of the time, people are just following incentives, habits, pressures. But the effect can still be the same. By the time we join the conversation, the shape of the conversation may be mostly fixed. So some questions we might sit with are, when I feel strongly about something, where did that feeling come from? Which fears in me are being called on, and by whom? Which information am I not seeing because nobody has a reason to show it to me? Do I ever walk into battles that someone else quietly prepared, using my energy to fight over ground they chose? These are not comfortable questions, but they can be freeing, because the moment you start seeing terrain, timing, framing, and perception, you're already less easily moved around by other people's plans. You start to become a bit more like Seren, a bit less like someone reacting to the loudest voice. So what do we do with all of this? We're not generals. Most of us are not council leaders. We are people trying to live, work, think, and make sense of a noisy world. Here are a few practical ways the ideas from the art of war can help you without turning life into a battlefield. 1. Look for the setup, not just the clash. Whenever you see a conflict at work, in news, in your social circles, ask yourself, who chose the time and place for this? Who benefits from this conflict happening now and like this? What would happen if this argument simply didn't happen? Sometimes you'll notice the conflict keeps you busy while something else goes untouched. By noticing the setup, you become less pulled into fights that don't serve you. 2. Be honest about your own limits and motives. Before you jump into a debate or a fight, ask, what am I really trying to protect here? My comfort, my image, someone else's safety, a real principle. How much can I actually afford to lose in this conflict? Time, energy, relationships, peace of mind. Am I walking into this because it's truly necessary, or because I feel pushed by emotion or pressure? That's knowing yourself. It doesn't mean never standing up. It means not being tricked by your own pride or fear into battles you can't win or don't need. 3. Try to understand what the other side needs, not just what they say. In a disagreement, instead of only thinking, how do I prove them wrong? You can also ask, what are they afraid of? What do they need to feel they haven't lost everything? Is there a way for them to step back without feeling destroyed? Sometimes just seeing this softens the whole dynamic. It doesn't mean you must give them what they want, but it means you can design solutions that are less likely to break everything. That's knowing others. 4. Notice the power of definitions. Watch for big words: security, freedom, justice, order, progress. Ask, who is defining these words? Has the meaning quietly changed? If we used a different definition, would I still agree? Like Seren did with safety, you can notice when someone is trying to fix the meaning of a word to make their plan feel obvious. This helps you think, do I agree with the definition or just the feeling it gives me? 5. Use these ideas to defend yourself, not just to win. The art of war can be used in cold, manipulative ways. It can also be used to protect your time, mind, and energy. You can use strategic thinking to avoid being dragged into endless, unproductive arguments. See when a situation is set up so you can only lose, and choose not to play. Build cooperation instead of constant conflict by preparing and listening early. Power is not only about dominating, it's also about not being easily dominated. Strategic awareness can be a form of self-respect. Seeing life through the lens of the art of war can feel unsettling. It suggests that many conflicts are shaped long before we notice them. People may be using fear and definitions to move us. Quiet preparation can matter more than loud honesty. It can make us feel suspicious. It can make us see strategy everywhere. At the same time, if we go too far with this mindset, we risk losing something important. Not every disagreement is a war. Not every person is an enemy. Not every strategy is manipulation. Sometimes it's simply good planning. For me, the most balanced way to hold this book is like this. It's not a rule book for how to treat people. It's a map of how conflict tends to work when things go wrong or when stakes are very high. It shows us patterns, the danger of pride, the power of preparation, the role of fear, the importance of understanding others' needs, the quiet influence of information and perception. We can learn from these patterns without turning our lives into a constant game of attack and defense. We can use this awareness not just to gain advantage over others, but to protect space for honesty, cooperation, and calm thinking. We can decide, yes, I see how someone could use this to manipulate. I choose to use it to avoid being manipulated. And, maybe, to build agreements that don't require shouting. In the end, the art of war is not telling us what kind of world to create. It's just whispering, here is how things tend to work when people struggle for power. What we do with that knowledge is still our responsibility. We've talked about ancient strategies, imaginary councils, hidden terrain, and silent victories. We've looked at how preparation, perception, and quiet decisions can matter more than noisy conflict. Now the question turns back to you. When you look at the arguments, movements, and changes around you today, in your workplace, your community, your media, do you think ideas like the ones in the art of war still shape our world today?